Hey y'all, welcome to Prepper Friday. I'm Madden from Self-Reliance Publishing, and today we're going to continue our series on how to live off the land in the city. This week we're talking about medium-sized game and how to harvest medium-sized game in the city in the most efficient way possible without causing or attracting attention to yourself. The principles are basically the same as we talked about last week for small game. So if you saw my video about small game in the city, then a lot of this might seem sort of redundant. I wanted to get out in the field today and show y'all some game trails in some areas where you can find medium-sized game, but it's been a monsoon here in North Carolina for the last month or so, and it's raining out there again today. So I'm basically forced to do this video inside, unfortunately. Like I said, we're following the same principles we talked about for small game last week. So that means trapping is preferable to hunting when it comes to taking medium-sized game. Some examples of medium-sized game are going to be raccoon, possum, beaver, and those are going to be your main medium-sized game that you're going to find in the city, at least here in this area. I wouldn't necessarily want to go out and eat these animals right here and right now because most of them, the raccoons and the possums and whatnot, have a tendency of rummaging around in trash and whatnot. You have no idea what those animals have been eating. And if there's an alternative, then I would probably prefer to eat that alternative. But that being the case, if you're hard pressed for a meal and you don't have any other source of food, I would not hesitate to eat raccoon meat, even from the city. Just cook it well done and hope for the best. But at any rate, of those three, probably beaver is going to be your best eaten meat. It's a dark red meat, and it's going to taste very much like other red meat. So beaver would be probably one of the first go-tos that I would use. And for harvesting beaver, you can use a number of things. One of the best methods of taking beaver probably is a conibear trap, like this big 330 conibear trap. These are big boys and they can cause a lot of harm, so you got to be careful with these guys. If you prefer to use a foothold trap, you're going to need at least a number 4. I don't have any number 4 foothold traps. All of my footholds are 1.5 and 2. We're going to get to that. But yeah, for beaver, these 330 conibears are a great method for taking beaver. Here in North Carolina, beaver is actually one of the few animals, I think probably the only animal that you can legally use a snare to take. So that's also another potentially good way of taking beaver would be snaring them. The thing I don't like about snaring, other than their extremely restrictive use here in North Carolina, would be the fact that their snares are basically disposable pieces of equipment. Conibear trap I can use again and again, and it's got a long useful life. A snare is a once and done sort of piece of gear. As soon as I catch an animal in that, it's going to get all kinked up and become unusable. So one snare is good for one animal, and if you get lucky and you get another use out of it, then that's great, but you can't count on it. For your other medium-sized game animals like raccoons, possums, and the like, you can use a number of other different types of traps. You can use conibears for them as well, an appropriate size for your raccoons and possums and the like. It's going to be a 220 conibear, like this one right here. These are a good option. Again, like we talked about for the small game video, conibears have the advantage in that they're killing type trap. They dispatch the game for you, so you don't have to do that. Disadvantage is that they kill the animal. So in a hot environment, hot weather, your meat is likely to spoil if the animal is killed several hours before you run your trap line. So that's something to consider. So with that in mind, it's good to have some other alternatives. And good alternatives for medium-sized game would be either these foot traps here. 110, these are 110, this is a 110 coil spring trap right here. And it's great for raccoons and similar sized animals. This one is a number 2 coil spring trap. And it's about the same size. It's a little bit bigger and an appropriate trap for fox, even coyotes, and animals like that. The 110 is also a great trap for muskrats. Excuse me, 1.5 is what I meant to say. The 1.5 is also a great trap for muskrats. So these foothold traps are good in that they keep the animal alive, but like we talked about in the small game video, that's also liability because the animal is alive and moving around. So it's more likely to draw attention to itself and be a target for trap thieves. Another type of live trap that I like to use, especially now in this social environment, is just a box trap. I like this one right here. This is a Duke, I believe, and this is the one that they have for raccoon sized game. I like that style because it's fairly durable, fairly heavily built, and if you catch a non-target animal, all you have to do is roll the cage over and the rings fall to the bottom and the door flaps open and the animal is free to go. So it's really easy to release a non-target animal should you catch one, and no harm will be done to that animal. So that's my go-to trap today. Now the disadvantage is you have to dispatch the animal, and with a foothold trap that could be relatively easy. You could use a club to club it on the head and kill it. For the cage type trap, your options, you can shoot it or you can drown it, which I'd honestly, call me squeamish, but I'd prefer not to do. Those are going to be some of the main options available to you as far as traps go. There's some specialty traps out there like the dog-proof traps for raccoons, which are little cylinders with spikes in it. You put the bait in and the raccoon, being curious and whatnot, sticks its paw in and then can't get it out. That's a specialty type trap. And you got your snares and I'm sure there's other specialty type traps out there, but those are going to be your main ones. On top of that, you have your primitive type traps, your deadfalls and primitive snares, and I believe that's important to be somewhat familiar with those at least, and have a working knowledge of them. So if your steel traps get damaged or stolen, or you are separated from them for some reason, you still have the skills and the ability to trap your game. So I think it's important to learn primitive trapping skills. Like we talked about for small game hunting, it's always good to be in a position to take game if the opportunity presents itself. You come across an animal, a medium-sized game animal, it's good to have the ability to take that. It might not be the best use of resources to hunt for medium-sized game because the return is going to be better than small game as far as calories put in to calories taken out, but it's still not going to be big enough to justify expending that energy, especially considering that most of your medium game animals are nocturnal. So you're going to have to be up at night, and it's just hard to justify throwing your entire schedule off to take a raccoon or take a possum. But should you run across a medium-sized game animal or beaver or something, it's good to have the ability to take said animal. And like we talked about for small game, primitive weapons are a good way to do that in the city. And in some ways, primitive weapons are more ideal than firearms because they don't draw attention and they're silent. So you got to be a little bit more selective about your weapon of choice with medium-sized game. A rabbit stick is not going to do the job on a beaver, more than likely. But a sling, if you're proficient with a sling and you can get a good shot and hit him in the head, a sling is more than capable of taking medium-sized game and larger. Bow and arrow would be a good choice, although people will recognize a bow and an arrow as a weapon. It still has the advantage of being silent, so you still have an advantage over a firearm. And atlatl, which I haven't covered on this channel yet, but I will, could be a potential weapon you could use for a medium-sized game. But for me, I think a sling, when I get more proficient again with one, and a bow and arrow would be my sort of go-to weapons for medium size and larger game when it comes to primitive weapons. I hope you found this video useful. Be sure to check out my other videos dealing with self-reliance, everything from homesteading to bushcraft to prepping. I appreciate every like, every comment, and every subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.